Should attorneys general serve effectively as presidential advisors and prosecutors while implementing presidential policies that are being challenged by Congress?
Well, there's no question that too many guns from the United States are finding their way into Mexico and are being used against our Mexican counterparts there.
In the Reagan administration, independent counsel Lawrence Walsh spoke about another attorney general and the role he played in defending presidential policies.
And I think that Attorney General Meese should be glad that we never indicted him. What happened was Attorney General Meese was called in by President Reagan to pull together what they called a, quote, coherent, close quote, explanation for Iran-Contra.
Lawrence Walsh, I think he must have had some hatred for President Reagan or something.
Attorneys general have been attacked for doing nothing while presidential investigations were underway.
She should have said, if in fact the independent counsel is behaving improperly, then I will remove the independent counsel, but stop the attacks.
In fact, the presidential prosecutor was removed in the Nixon-Watergate era.
But there's an enormous political cost in firing a special prosecutor, as some of us learned back in the old days when we did that. And you couldn't fire a second one.
Attorney General Kleindienst acknowledged the difficult situation faced by an attorney general during a presidential investigation.
Well, I don't know if you ever read those tapes. There's a lot of funny little things going on in that White House at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, you know, that surprised a lot of us.
40 years after Watergate and numerous presidential investigations, America is facing the same question. Does the Attorney General have the authority and the will to investigate and prosecute the presidency?
All of these judges are tainted.
It was the worst time in my life.
These are people that are supposed to uphold the law.
We weren't sure whether the sacrifice that he was making to himself and to our family was worth it.
This is actually the biggest judicial scandal and judicial bribery scheme in American history.
Mr. Fine had a miracle.
You were a lawyer, and you knew the judge in front of you was dirty. Would you blow the whistle on him? How about if you knew that calling him out would destroy your career, ruin you financially, and even wind up with you in jail, potentially for the rest of your life? This is the frightening story of Richard I. Fine and his incredible courage, who took on the justice system of California and lost everything.
We're dealing with a dysfunctional system and a judge that is dealing with political retaliation.
Dr. Fine accused Judge Jaffe, in fact all of the Los Angeles Superior Court judges, of taking illegal payments.
The county wanted to influence the judges to decide the cases in the county's favor.
Judge Jaffe hammered Dr. Fine with an indeterminate sentence of solitary coercive confinement in the Los Angeles County Jail.
They took me down through a back elevator in the courthouse and into a sheriff's car, and I was transported to the jail where I was booked, photographed, and go through the entire booking procedure, stripped down, given jail clothing.
Because of who he was, he had no choice but to stand up for real justice and pay whatever price was necessary.
I came here on March 4th, 2009, so I've now been here a year and 6 days. I've been in solitary confinement the entire time. I've been outside for 9 hours. I readily admit that I did not realize that the hatred of the judges who were getting the criminal payoffs was so great that they were going to do everything possible to keep me in here, and that the other parts of the judiciary was going to try and cover these payments up. The judges are so arrogant and feel themselves to be so above the law They cannot deal with the fact that I have caught them with their hand in the cookie jar. They knew from day one that they were breaking the law. And they went ahead and they did it. They destroyed our judicial system. Sooner or later, I will win.
Who controls the election process? For decades, the California Election Code has guaranteed citizen oversight of the election process. But in recent years, that role has diminished and changed drastically. In 2008, over 3,500 county workers were recruited to run the precinct polling places. Election laws were changed so that precinct officials were no longer required to be residents within that precinct, which removed the checks and balances that had been in place.
Where we have county employee poll workers who also, they spend their workday working at the polling place as a part of their job here at the county.
Even elected officials have expressed concern about the growing influence of county employees in local elections, particularly on matters concerning their pension.
At the local level, unions are rather influential in local elections. And so elected officials will do what the unions ask them to do.
The policy of the registrar in Orange County is to prevent citizens from verifying the accuracy of the county poll workers. Only if a lawsuit is filed would he make available the voter rosters.
If there is an election challenge in court or if there is a recount, those are the times that we open those up per statute. Otherwise, they're protected. And voters, I would think, would appreciate the fact that those are protected.
But in Los Angeles, the registrar has an entirely different interpretation.
Those are public records, and so we do have people come in after the election and ask to view rosters and to compare those records. And so that's, again, part of our process. The process belongs to the voters. So, our records are available for inspection. And if discrepancies are identified or there are questions left as a result of that, we encourage people to let us know about that, and we would look into that.
When Orange County volunteers were not allowed to verify the accuracy of election tabulation, they were dismayed and disappointed.
I wanted to see for myself if our votes are actually being counted fairly, if they're being counted at all, and what kind of error rate there is in the voting, if it would actually make a difference in a proposition or candidate winning or failing.
We had no way of actually verifying where some of the numbers came from, particularly on the second voter registrar when they were bundled together and they came to us. It left me wondering what they're hiding. What is in there that's so important that it's not public record.
Full Disclosure has produced a documentary that includes interviews with election officials, county poll workers, former legislators, and citizen poll watchers whose observations paint a picture of the changing control over the election process.
This, to me, is the biggest fraud that has ever occurred on the public.
And what we found was enormous waste, fraud, and abuse.
I spent 3 years of my life investigating Belmont.
Belmont itself was originally conceived to be a multi-use, I won't say joint-use facility. It was going to have a grocery store at the bottom, it was going to have housing, it was going to have quite a number of components that really weren't permitted by law at the time in the state of California.
The LA Unified School District hired me as Inspector General and told me to find out what went wrong with the school project.
Well, the first time that we visited the site, we visited it with District Attorney Cooley.
My staff and I wrote 2 massive reports documenting all that happened from beginning to end.
How can the Inspector General dig out all this stuff with all of these exhibits and everything and have nothing be wrong?
Well, there's a lot wrong. The Belmont High School project, the Belmont Learning Center, was probably the worst public works disaster perhaps in the history of the country, at least in terms of school building. A lot went wrong over there.
It was a tragedy because they knew, they being the school district and the people developing the property, at all times about the environmental hazards.
As we went through the process of interviewing and looking at documents, we found there were a number of consultants that questioned things. And when they questioned things, they were removed as consultants.
My job was to identify the problems and make recommendations. With the massive corruption identified, I recommended employee terminations and even prosecution.
The district attorney is the one, as the chief law enforcement officer, to decide to go forward and to prosecute. If the district attorney doesn't do it, the inspector general does not have prosecutorial power.
I think there's clearly some, if not criminal wrongdoing, it certainly is civil wrongdoing.
The entire task force endorsed my recommendations, but politics intervened.
What was the outcome of this investigation?
Nothing. The only thing that occurred was after I was removed as head of the Belmont Task Force is that Steve Cooley issued a whitewash report of what really had occurred regarding the investigation pertaining to the $175 million fraud.
Coming soon, Belmont, the world's most expensive high school.
We have millions of dollars sitting in this infrastructure account. There's no reason why we shouldn't start utilizing that money today.
The city of Los Angeles is the media capital of the world, and the city officials are diverting millions in franchise fees specifically designated for public access television for their own use.
Channel 35's strategic plan is a multi-year plan that lays out a strategic vision for how to transform Channel 35 and government access in the city of Los Angeles.
In 2006, the Digital Infrastructure and Video Competition Act released cable and telecom companies from having to provide television studios for public use, as long as they paid local municipalities a franchise fee, specifically to replace the facilities that were lost. Here in Los Angeles, the city government has decided to control all the public channels without dedicating any strictly for public use. And now the city television channels are moving to gobble up the rather significant funds supposed to be used to support public access television.
Somebody down the road decided that this Channel 35, 36, and PEG channels and all of that could survive on less. So the council either took a motion or they did a policy decision and they made some arbitrary number. Oh, we'll give you 40 cents in every dollar and the other 60 cents we're going to put in a general fund. Even though knowing a cable customer, because that was the world, that was supposed to all go to cable money. And the city had no right to do it.
They have really big plans to have government propaganda in our buses, in our taxi cabs, on our internet, on our mobile phones, without any other voices except the voice of the government. They want to take money that could be used to support people creating television for public access, from their own points of view, for self-expression, and they want to take that money and they want to produce government propaganda shows saying the government's doing a great job. Can't we have a civil conversation with intelligent discourse of people with differing points of view that would inform the populace, create a public debate, create civic engagement in a healthy community?
It boils down to an attitude that we currently find on all levels of government.
The number one issue, I think, is the disrespect of the people. It's been the number one issue, is they just don't respect us. And we're going to have to make them respect us.
You can do whatever we want because we're in where we are, but I'm not going to say it again in any other committee meetings, but I think what the city council did in taking 60% violated the law, period.
The real purpose of building the marina was for small craft recreational harbor. That was the intent by the federal government to even get involved.
The
corruption just has gotten worse and worse and worse to where that power has just changed it and morphed it into something that it was just never intended to be. As more and more residents started to pop up in that what was once considered a park, a recreational park, that's what it was always considered to be.
Everything in Marina del Rey is owned by the county. They're supposed to protect it the way the national government is protecting Yosemite. But instead they're breaking all the laws, ignoring the laws, and trying to make a Miami Beach out of it.
The U.S. Corps of Engineers had actually made the assumption that there would be room for 6,000 to 8,000 berths for boats. And they actually began, fulfilling that. But the problem was the county needed to raise money to pay off the bond.
The county supervisors have given the developers the green light. Construction has begun in earnest. The streets are choked with heavy equipment as the city and the county install the infrastructure to support the thousands and thousands of anticipated new residents. The developers are mobilizing their PR firms to begin the publicity campaign to sell the hundreds of luxury residences that will pay huge dividends to the developers and the county. The old Delray Shores is gone, the tenants evicted, and the buildings destroyed to make way for the larger, bigger shores. The lawyer who was hired to stop them was disbarred and thrown into jail. But even from his jail cell, he kept fighting. And his words to us, even as he sat in jail, are fighting words meant for all of us who care about controlling our destiny.
These judges are elected. These supervisors are elected. They may be trying to keep me in jail right now, and they may be trying to control you because they're controlling the system through an abuse of power. But what we've got is we have an election, and you can throw these people out. No matter what happens, no matter how much advertising takes place, and I'll give you the very simple formula. You walk into your electoral place, you bring in 2 friends, and the 3 of you go in and you vote the bums out.
As you can see, these are critically important issues that are almost ready to be completed. The post-production and promotion of these projects are urgently needed. The future of America is at stake as to how we are to be governed. Governance at every level must adhere to the rule of law and the U.S. Constitution. Please join us now.